Harmy, emphatic stuff, wasn't it? They had the demolition of Oman, followed by the demolition of the USA. I mean, it really was emphatic. They weren't the strongest of opposition, but after that drilling by Australia in the opening game, I have to say that England are looking very, very good.
Yeah, very good. Again, I'll come back to what I said a week ago, when I sat here and had a right rant about the way that England performed against Australia and its decision making. I thought, again, we could have made better decisions against Africa, and that's possibly what cost us there as well. I wasn't sure about the coin toss situation, but hey, they were excellent, really were. I'm so pleased for. It's just a pity that Chris Jordan, CJ, is going to have a semi-final and a final, because for me that's retirement stuff. It is a hat trick to finish off an innings in Barbados, where you were born and where you're from. I mean, that's fairy tale stuff. I'm so pleased for Chris Jordan, because he's had a lot of injuries and everything that he's gone through. But yes, it was emphatic. It was a little bit of a mismatch against the Americans, but it's brilliant to see America get to the Super 8s. I thought Butler was at his belligerent best in the second half of it. And when you play against the sort of smaller nations, if you've got somebody ridiculously quick, or if you've got somebody that's got mystery and spin, then that's something they don't play. Man, as you brought up the point, it was a great point you brought up a few weeks ago, talking about USA. Don't sort of take them lightly. They've been playing 80 or 100 games around USA. All their players are used to playing T20 cricket. I'm not sure they've faced anybody like Adil Rashid. I mean, we're going to hear from Rashid Khan in this tournament, and he is number one pick in every draft for franchise tournaments. And I can't believe Adil Rashid's not number two, because his googly and his mystery is fantastic. And I thought it was Adil who changed the sort of the flow of that first innings. They were going all right, I thought, the USA, and then Rashid come on, a couple of leg spinners, a couple of top spinners, and he got 3 or 4 wickets. He got created 3 or 4 good chances with the googly. I thought Rashid was magnificent.
Yeah, just to confirm, for those of you who missed the details, England chased down 115 in 9.4 overs, with the captain making 83 not out off just 38 balls. Chris Jordan taking a hat trick, 4 wickets in 5 balls, quite extraordinary. And yet, it was a delight to see that Adil Rashid was named man of the match with his 2 for 13, or player of the match from his 4 overs. Didn't concede a single boundary. Let's get some reaction then from the England camp.
Obviously, the hat trick is definitely a special one. I'll come on to that in a second, but I thought the team performance was really solid today. The way we set the tone in the power play. We knew they were going to come hard, played a few good shots, but then the way Livy and Rash control things for us in the middle just set up things nicely for us at the back end, and we were able to reap the rewards. But to get that hat trick, obviously in a well-documented, a place that I was born, a place that I played so much cricket, in front of my family, my friends, the atmosphere, hearing the music going, everything, a nice day. It was a special one.
Understandably delighted England team, looking very, very good, very strong now. Harmy, you mentioned about the USA. We'll come on to the other teams' contributions. We'll talk about Nepal and Afghanistan as well. And you also referred to the Americans. And the fact is that not very many of them are American.
No.
But that might change in the years to come. If we look back in, I don't know, 5, 6, 10, 12 years' time, hopefully there will be more locally grown talent. At the moment, it's they're in the import business. South Africans there, Caribbean players, players from the West Indies. But if you had scripted the USA reaching the Super 8s, you'd have been laughed out of town, and yet they've done it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you would have been laughed out of town. Nothing wrong with imports. England have done well. We've done well. I've done well with a few imports. One had a ridiculous haircut, I remember, when we were quite successful, and he was a big import, and he didn't do too badly for England, and that wasn't a bad thing when we had Peterson. So I think imports are fine. I think it as long as the next part of it, the next phase of it, is growing the game, which I'm hoping and assuming that this MLC, they're taking they're making good strides. You've got Ricky Ponting, you've got Pat Cummins. They're going to inspire the next generation of American sports fans to hopefully take up cricket, which is going to be fantastic. We've had a good spectacle from a crowd point of view. I don't think we've had a great spectacle from a cricket point of view on some of the American pitches. But hey ho, that's a start, and we're going somewhere. So I'm pleased that everything's gone like that. And I think if you did script it from an ICC point of view, they probably want England and India in the final, or India or Pakistan in the final, but it's not going to happen. So it could be an England-India final now. And they would want the Americans to not disgrace themselves, go as far as they can. And I think the Super 8s, I think will be, Stuart Law must be so proud of what his team have achieved getting to this point. And hopefully, fingers crossed, the fans from over the pond, as they'll say, will start taking up cricket as opposed to baseball.
Amazing that Stuart Law was only given the job, and many people thought that it was a hospital pass when he accepted it. It was a couple of weeks before the tournament started. The USA were in disarray. The players are being paid less per match than England's players get in meal money. The administration was an absolute shambles, and yet somehow Stuart Law has done something behind the scenes. Sometimes success can be bred out of diversity or adversity, and that seems to have been the case this time round.
It does, yeah. And Stewie's a good man. Stewie's somebody who's been involved in all walks of changing rooms. He's been into the sort of the subcontinent change room. He's been in the Caribbean changing room. Obviously, he's very, very successful in an Australian domestic change room and played for Australia and played a hell of a lot of county cricket with a lot of different nationalities. So he's gone in there and he just seems to have brought a whole team to play like a team. And I think that is half the battle when you're playing a tournament. Not get too high, not get too low. And I'm sure he'll be proud of everything he's done. Jonathan Trott, I'm sure we'll come on to Trotty soon with Afghanistan. And he's done that brilliantly with Afghanistan. Afghanistan have got some wonderfully talented players. You've still got to get them all in the right order, and you've got to get them going down the track in the same sort of way and make sure that there's no deviation whatsoever. And Stewie Law looks as though he's hit the ground running. He's gone into the USA, and hopefully that's just a sort of base point that American cricket can go from. And fingers crossed for Stewie that he gets the job on a full-time basis. He can give his expertise to the management and the infrastructure and how they're going to build cricket in America. And you never know, in 3 or 4 years' time, Stuart Law might be at another World Cup, and they might be more successful.
Okay, and just quickly, Harmy, little piece of recently breaking news. England will tour India in January and February next year for 5 T20s and 3 ODIs. Is that again an opportunity to build? I mean, it's a couple of months before the Champions Trophy. Well, no, it's not actually. It's a couple of weeks before the Champions Trophy, which supposedly will take place in Pakistan. We think that it'll be Pakistan and UAE combined who host that tournament. But that's every ball will be live here on talkSPORT 2.
Yeah, look forward to that. Can't wait. We might get sent over, Manners. We might have a few more tuk-tuk rides, and I'm sure Scott Taylor, our producer, his knuckles are still white from the last one, and that was nearly 6 months ago. So, look, it's great that talkSPORT listeners are going to have live cricket, especially England against India. And you're right, it's going to be a nice little warm-up. I'm surprised it's 5 T20s and 3 ODIs because it's a Champions Trophy, and the Champions Trophy is a 50-over competition, and it's a short competition as well, at the top of the best 8 teams. So I thought it might have been the other way around, but any time in England versus India is always well populated, and the crowds will be massive, and it'll be in before the Champions Trophy and then in before the IPL. So I'd imagine there'll be a lot of eyes glued and hopefully ears listening to talkSPORT for that series.
Okay, and 30 seconds. England's composition going into the semi-finals and final. They started without Sam Curran, and without Chris Jordan, now both in the starting 11. Mark Wood was left out. I guess Ben Duckett is very much a reserve, but otherwise, are England choosing from 13 or 14 still?
I think they're still choosing from 12, 13. I know. I was hearing a few whispers about Tom Hartley, possibly, if the with the pitches getting more deteriorating more and more, as the days of this World Cup is going on. So to get another spinner in there, yes, that would possibly be nice. But I think we've got enough when it comes to spin bowling department. Moeen Ali, Liam Livingstone, and obviously the great man Adil Rashid. I think there's enough there to cover that. I think more pace off will probably be better than Sam Curran. Possibly bowl in a game in a semi-final, will probably bowl average speed over 4 overs, a similar speed to Tom Hartley, because he'll be taking all the pace off and coming from a different height. And then you've got Sam's batting as well. So I don't see this team changing too much now. I'd be surprised if Mark Wood comes back in. I'd be surprised if Ben Duckett gets a game. Will Jacks looks as though he's the way that, for me, that top 4 is the best top 4 now. Bairstow had to get higher. Somehow they had to get Bairstow higher, and also they had to get Brook in a position to get in as early as he possibly can. So from that point of view, I think England are possibly just picking from 12.
Did make me smile when Jos Buttler said afterwards that Chris Jordan was selected to strengthen the batting at number 8. And of course, England won by 10 wickets. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. Next up, Mel Farrell joins us to look back at some of the key games in the Super 8s as Afghanistan shock Australia in Kingstown. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with Double Ashes winner Steve Harmison. And you can now subscribe to the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel for plenty more content, including the latest episode of Harmy and Kimber, where they discuss how Nepal can kick on after appearing at this T20 World Cup.
I still want them to have not even a 90-mile-an-hour bowler.
They need
an 85-mile-an-hour bowler who can bang it into the deck. Like something a little bit different would be good for them. They seem to have a lot of sort of whippy medium pace. Do you know what I mean? Like the 82 miles an hour,
skillful
ones,
a little bit.
Yeah, good bowlers and they're talented. So I think they need that. But spin in those places, you're right, John. I mean, they've got 2 really good wrist spinners. Who knows what Sandeep's future is? They've got another good wrist spinner coming through. They've got plenty of finger spinners. But they also need, and you could say this about Afghanistan up until about 2 years ago, you just need guys who can average 35 in international cricket and knock the ball past mid-off and mid-on.
That's Jarrod Kimber and Harmy talking about Nepal's appearance at this year's T20 World Cup and what they need to do to kick on. Certainly, judging by their support base, that is a great place to start. Anyway, Mel Farrell joins us now from Antigua. With reaction, we hope, to an extraordinary, not just result, extraordinary game of cricket between Afghanistan and Australia. Given what happened 7 months ago in the 50-over World Cup, and that Glenn Maxwell was still there, as the drama unfolded, you just thought, this cannot be repeating itself. And yet this time Afghanistan prevailed by 21 runs. And Mel, oh, what a story. What a story. How did Australia take it? The team, that is.
Well, I'm not with the Australian team at the moment, but I certainly, let's rewind. The last time I spoke to you guys, you might remember I said that Afghanistan were my dark horse for semi-finalists in this tournament. And so I wasn't actually surprised. And I'm not just saying that after the fact. Always felt that if Afghanistan, particularly if they were playing in the right conditions, that they could actually beat any team in this tournament. And I still feel that. But they had the right conditions at St. Vincent, and they used them. I mean, they used them and they used bowlers, didn't they? 8 of them, I think, all up. And so it was really smart. I think what has impressed me, because it wasn't just against Australia last year in India. Even go back to the last T20 World Cup in Australia in Adelaide, they came so close to winning that match. And they've just been almost there with Australia. And we spoke a bit last time about how, you know, they've had the bowlers, their bowling has expanded. It's not just about the spinners. They've got great seam options as well, but also that the batters have kind of gone beyond that phase where we all thought, oh, gee, there's some potential there, to actually really delivering on the big occasions. And boy, oh boy, didn't they do that on this occasion, the opening partnership that really set things up. I know some people at the time might have been thinking that they weren't going hard enough, but the fact that that opening partnership set things up so that when they did lose a lot of wickets, they had such a good base, and it was clearly not easy batting in those circumstances. So, I mean, I just think they lived up to their potential. Perhaps one of the things that's key now, having gone through the heartbreak of getting so close in Australia in the last T20 World Cup, and then the excruciating realization that, you know, after dropping Glenn Maxwell a couple of times, he went on to destroy their dreams of beating Australia in India. I think maybe part of Afghanistan's challenge has been controlling emotions when they get into those big, high pressure games where they can do something absolutely incredible. And I think for teams coming up and not having played, being used to playing in World Cups all the time, like teams like Australia and England do, that is a part of it, in being able to stay crystal clear, calm in your thinking and your decision making, making sure that nothing else is going through your head when the ball's hanging up in the air and, you know, you're about to try and attempt to take a catch. All of those things. I just felt like there was a maturity in Afghanistan that perhaps saw them through some of those big moments. They didn't panic when Glenn Maxwell started to get going. And I give, you know, Jonathan Trott and his team a lot of credit in that, in being able to really help them find an emotional path to winning. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know, Harmy, you might be able to sort of expand on if that is a thing, but that's kind of what it's felt a bit like, as much as the skills on the park has been them finding a way to just have the mental clarity and the emotional maturity on the pitch to be able to see it home.
Yeah, I think that's a large probably part of what Jonathan Trott's been doing since India is knowing that this Afghanistan team can perform with bat, with ball, and with field. It's just, you know, critical times dealing with pressure, and that's sometimes the hardest thing to do, because when everything's going swimmingly and everything's going well, you can nail your York and you can nail your leg spin and you can whack it out the park. But, you know, when you need 12 to win and there's 3 balls left, and can you hit Pat Cummins over his head? You utilise the power play, because I thought it was a power play wicket again, like England, South Africa, that they nailed the power play, and I'm sure that's what Jonathan Trott was saying. But I think from an Australian point of view, Mel, you talk about going under the radar. Pat Cummins again, another hat trick. That seemed to went under the radar, and potentially, I'm sitting here looking at a Zoom screen, of somebody who's covers South Africa and somebody who covers Australia, and they're both going to potentially lose one game, and they both might go out.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, this whole World Cup has been fascinating for me cricket-wise, but the way that these two groups have really opened up is just something else. I mean, I'm here today. We've got West Indies and South Africa tonight. The pressure on that game to try and get to the semis is now really massive. And as for Australia, India, in St. Lucia, that's going to be an absolute doozy. So Afghanistan's just kind of come on in up there and really blown that apart, where I don't think anyone was taking it for granted, but I think most people would have felt that both India and Australia would be in a pretty strong position to do it. So just the way it has opened up. South Africa's interesting for me because, you know, they almost haven't quite put the full game together. They did play really well against Bangladesh here in Antigua a few days back. But up against a West Indies side that will have a rocking crowd behind them tonight, that's going to be a doozy as well. It's exciting, isn't it? It's fun. It's actually really exciting, and you just don't know who might spoil the party at this stage.
Oh, Mel, that's so polite of you saying South Africa haven't quite put their best game together. They've been poor. They've been really poor. I want to ask you about something. No, I mean, look, winning games, 3 games that you should have lost, give great credit. So, Aidan Markram's captaincy has been very good. But I want to ask you about something else. Mel, I've just written a column saying basically that I obviously spent the first 2 weeks, 12 days in New York, and 10:30 games were a disaster. And I'm quite sick of the cliche that, the Caribbean is a region of party islands where 8:30 starts are great. And that's all very well for England supporters to get back to their hotel room at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning and wake up and have a leisurely brunch at 10:30 in the morning. But taxi drivers still have to go home. Vendors still have to go home. I mean, 10:30 starts in the morning and 8:30 starts in the evening. I've got a real bee in my bonnet about it. And it's all about the Indian television audience. And I just think, how are we going to wind this back? I mean, the next time the tournament's in Australia, are we going to start games at 11 p.m., finish them at 2:30? I mean, how are 8:30 starts going down in the Caribbean?
Oh, I can't swear on this program, can I? Because I'd love to.
We can bleep it.
Bleep it. It's awful. It's what of an idea. Okay, bleep that all out if you like. It's horrible. It really is. Look, and I've been talking to sort of some people around the teams as well. The players don't like it. The players don't like it at all. They're having to, the ones who are switching from one to the other, I mean, you can imagine how much that is screwing with the equilibrium or the way that they are normally used to operate. When there was the game here that was eventually finished, well, the rain brought an end to it early. When I say early, that Australia-Bangladesh game, they finally called it off at 20 past midnight. I reckon from about 11 o'clock was when people started leaving. Fans just left the ground. And there weren't many people left at all. There were some diehard Bangladesh fans, and that was about it at the end. And I've been to quite a few. That's not the only night game I've been to that has finished well after midnight. I guess, where do you draw the line with this stuff? And I've been thinking very similar things to you, Manners, about, when do we start times? Some of it, I get they want to have the same time, but who really gets an advantage out of having Australia playing Bangladesh starting at 8:30 p.m. At night here? It's not a great time for anyone. That wouldn't be just as good if it started at 7:30. It really wouldn't. In India, I think it's 6:30 in the morning. If you're so keen to watch Australia play Bangladesh in India that you'll get up for a 6 a.m. start, I'm pretty sure if you're that keen, you'll get up at 5 a.m. And good luck to you. You are the fans we need. We do have to, I do get it, and I understand, particularly for some of the big India games, that they bankroll so much in this sport. So that's something that we can't walk away from. India, Pakistan alone bankrolls associate teams getting to play, all that sort of stuff. So that's great. But then to have then the other teams around playing at these weird times that don't even seem to really work for their own countries, I don't know. I don't think the players are enjoying it. I certainly know I'm not enjoying it. I pulled a 24-hour day after the Australia-Bangladesh. I was up working for 24 hours, and I'm actually expecting to do the same tonight, because if that game There are a few showers around. If that game goes till like half midnight, and then we've got presses and then, having to write up pieces, I'd say I probably won't get to bed tonight. And it's not about me. No one really cares about me, but it just, the whole thing it just seems ridiculous. We've got to be a bit more sensible about it, I think.
Yeah, I'm thankful for a pause button or a record button, and I can come back the next morning and watch it and fast forward through all the ads. So yeah, I'm not really bothered because it's at the time I want to watch it. So but just finally, Mel, and I think you're right. I think I've been so underwhelmed by this tournament. I think some of the pictures have been poor, and that hasn't come out because nobody wants to talk about, from an ICC point of view. The commentators are never going to see it because obviously of who they're working for. I've really been underwhelmed by the size of the tournament, the times of the games, and everything that comes. But because we've got you on to talk about Australia, just one final thing. If Australia go out, could they look at some of their fielding displays? Because against Scotland, they were sloppy. Against Afghanistan, I thought they were really sloppy against Afghanistan. And small margins could potentially knock Australia out.
So after the Scotland game, I mean, that was just weird. I think it was 6 drop chances. And we were in the press box, and I was saying, like, when is the last time that you can remember Australia dropping 6 catches in an innings in any format? I mean, maybe 4 if they're having a bad day, but in the space of 20 overs, that was weird. So you sort of thought, aberration, right? And then again, against Afghanistan, you'd have to say it was another sloppy display in the field. So happening twice, maybe that is something that you have to look at, and wondering why that's happening, particularly because Australia pride themselves as much as anything on being super sharp in the field. It's one of their defining characteristics when they play cricket. So I mean, I don't know why it's happening. Sure, there are some difficulties here because the cross breezes, I think, in the Caribbean do make it particularly tricky at times. You've seen a few catches that, that way where it's the ball's just not landing at the last moment where I think players are expecting it to. But I mean, they're also professional cricketers who know that and who've got a lot of experience. So that's probably been the most disappointing aspect of Australia's play in this T20 World Cup. I think it's just been the poor fielding in the last couple of games. And I'll tell you what, if they're going to go any further in this competition, that's something that they'll have to, because you don't want to be dropping, Virat Kohli or Surya Kumar Yadav, do you, in St. Lucia? They'll make you pay.
They will make you pay, Mel. And talking of pay, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. But how much have you paid for your semi-final? Have you picked your semi-final? Please don't tell me you're trying to get to both. No.
I'm going to neither. I'm going to go straight to Barbados because it's too difficult. So the game yesterday, genuinely, it's too hard. So yesterday's game between India and Bangladesh was the emptiest I've ever seen a press box for an India game because a large proportion of the Indian journalists couldn't actually get to St. Lucia and then get to Antigua and then get back to St. Lucia for the Australia game because they were having to go via New York or Miami, and for some it was like a 30-hour flight. So that it's just not it's not worth it. They've got a great hub that you can work from in Barbados. So you've got everything there. You can be involved with the press conferences. They've got massive screens, great Wi-Fi, all of that. So I will watch from there, either from the media center or sitting in my room with another glass of rum and Diet Coke. Which kind of sounds like the best option.
Mel, the other thing I said in my column is that this has been an extraordinary logistical achievement, the greatest logistical achievement in the ICC's 30 years of event history. But why? Why would you jump out of a hot air balloon at 30,000 feet just because you can? It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, it's like as you said, I mean, journalists are like a 30-hour journey to go from one venue to another in an ICC tournament.
And I mean, I am very aware that no one cares about journalists, but it's not just journalists, it's fans as well. I mean, even with the players, India played here yesterday, the 10:30 a.m. start, and then they were on a plane in the afternoon to St. Lucia. So it is hard. Look, what I would say though, yes, it has been a logistical nightmare. Apart from, I think, the next World Cup in South Africa, Champions Trophy in Pakistan, I think like all major ICC senior men's tournaments are being held in the big three. And so I do think it's important that it isn't just the big three hosting. We do have to try and share the wealth and share the love and share the tourism and the traveling fans and everything else around. So for that, this part of the world is so in love with cricket. You see it everywhere. Cricket is in the fabric of life wherever you go in the Caribbean, and they are crying out for money. And so this tournament will hopefully have some financial benefit for them. So I do have some sympathy with that angle, and I don't want to see it just end up being England, Australia and India hosting these events. But this is also such a short tournament, and that has made it incredibly difficult as well. Really hard. It's hard for the players, the fans. Won't someone think of the journalists? Yeah, it's been pretty brutal. Let's put it that way. That plus the hours for sure.
Thanks, Mel. There may be more chance of solving world hunger and climate change than the dominance of the big three. But anyway, thanks a lot for your time. It's been an absolute joy, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Yay! Yes, I'll look forward to talking to you. I might get myself a cocktail and bring that to the next one.
You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. And if you've missed any of the show or you want to catch up, you can download the podcast, as always, from the Following On feed, available via the free talkSPORT app or wherever you get your podcasts. A couple of listener questions, Harmy. Given that we've discussed Matthew Mott's role as head coach of the white ball teams in some detail, and he has struggled, is this exoneration the form of the England team? Has he saved his job? Because he was very, very close to losing it, so we thought. Is this exoneration, or will they have to win it, or is he still under question?
You know what? That's such a difficult question. That is such a difficult question, because I actually still think if they win it, he still is very, very vulnerable. I think he is. I don't think so. I think something's not quite right in there when it comes to the white ball team. See the inconsistency of the way they perform, the way the decision making. Winning the toss and bowling first on a couple of pitches when you see and you know the history of the ground. It's like this pitch is not going to get any better, having fielded on it for 20 overs. So I think there's something not quite right in there. And if it's Butler's leadership, possibly, I don't know. If it's Mott's ability to inspire, if it's, if I don't know what it's like inside that dressing room. The funny thing is, right, Matthew Mott could potentially, and I can see this happening, Matthew Mott potentially could lose his job for winning 2 out of 3 competitions, right? Because he's not quite inspiring. There's something not there with him, and I think a lot of people agree with this from a former player's point of view. But then Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes, who are bottom of the ICC Test Championship, who have lost in India, who didn't win the Ashes, and they're like as though they've reinvented the wheel and they're the best things in Test match cricket. So, and it's so hard saying it, but I think he is still. I still think even if Matthew Mott wins it, I still think he is slightly vulnerable. I'm sitting here a week before the final, so they're still going to play the semi-final, still going to play the final. But I'm trying to say this from where we are right now. I still think even if they win it, I'm not sure he might not want to carry on. If I was Matthew Mott, I'd be tempted to go, you know what, I'm getting a bit stick here. I've won 2 out of 3 competitions. What on earth do they want? I'll move on and go and do some franchise stuff. I'll go and do something that's it. So, it's such a difficult question because they've just qualified for the semi-final. But I still think there's something not quite right in that dressing room, and I think that's been shown by some of the inconsistencies in their performance and their decision making.
All right, Harmy, just here's an analogy for you, if you like. John Buchanan is statistically one of the most successful international coaches of all time, over almost a decade in charge of the Australian team. Shane Warne reckoned he had the personality of a filing cabinet. He was also a clipboard man, and yet the team found a way to utilize him. I mean, I won't say be successful in spite of him, far from it. But, you know, John Buchanan used to produce reams and reams of notes and analysis, which Shane Warne would sort of roll up into a fag paper, and and it may just be that actually there is a place for Matthew Mott and his clipboard, and the players have found a way to work with his qualities. And what do you think?
I hope that's true. I really hope that's true. But John Buchanan, like Glenn McGrath, Shane Warne, Ricky Ponting, Adam Gilchrist. I mean, do you want me to carry on the nightmares I used to have, trying to wake up in the morning of a hotel thinking, what on earth am I going to do at this lot now? I'm not saying anybody could have coached that team, because they couldn't. I mean, you have to have special qualities to get players in a position to go and perform the best they possibly can. Shane Warne was sometimes critical of Ricky Ponting's captaincy. There's a question mark a little bit on Joss Butler's captaincy. I don't know. And that's the thing that I said right at the very start. I have got no idea how to answer that question, because I think if you ask a lot of former players, if you ask a lot of fans, they're still underwhelmed by, the 50 over World Cup. Is Matthew Mott the right one? But you ask the same fans. I mean, Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum are the best thing ever to happen to English cricket. And we didn't win the Ashes. We got beaten in India, and we're bottom of the Test Championship. But that's the reality of a result-driven business. That one's getting results and we're questioning them. The other one's not quite getting the results that we want, but their performance and their wow factor with the public is unbelievable. And don't get me wrong, I'm not having a go at McCullum and Stokes' management in any way, because I think they'll eventually win more than they'll lose once they get all their ducks in a row and making more consistent decisions. But there's just something doesn't seem quite right. Can't put my finger on it, and why Matthew Mott and Joss Butler doesn't get the headlines that McCullum and Stokes get.
Okay, a couple of radical changes of tack now. Let's look at New Zealand. Kane Williamson was explaining why he rejected a central contract with New Zealand. We're quite used to this now. He's not the first one. Yeah. He's not the first New Zealander. Trent Boult kind of set the trend. Lockie Ferguson has indicated that he'll also reject a central contract. Before we get on to that, let's just hear from Williamson.
Looking at the schedule ahead and having very little on in that January window, felt like it was a nice opportunity to look at that. Unfortunately, it meant turning down a central contract. However, my priority still is absolutely playing for New Zealand, and I think everybody has a different situation, and they're trying to assess what it is for them and for me and my family, and at this stage of my career and the calendar that we have coming up. It's something exciting and something to look forward to, and something a little bit different, without really interfering with the international schedule. So although it's turning down, I suppose, a central contract, it's really no different in terms of the playing schedule and representing New Zealand.
Does that sort of indicate that you'd be looking to go back on a central contract when there's a more normal schedule the following season? Yeah,
I mean, that's a possibility for sure. We're just looking at the year ahead, like I mentioned, and made that decision, and New Zealand cricket have been a part of that thought process the whole way, and been supportive and had their blessing as well. So, like I say, it's an exciting opportunity for me and my family for just a small period of time during the 12-month schedule. you know, unfortunate that it means turning down a central contract, but they're the rules, and my time in a Black Caps jersey in terms of playing is as it was, and the commitment and the passion to do that's very much still there.
That was Kane Williamson basically saying it comes down to money. If you have a central contract, you have to play the Super Smash, in which you don't get paid very much. You can get paid a lot more elsewhere. The irony to all this, to me, is that I don't know why anybody would want to pay huge amounts of money for Kane Williamson. With the greatest of respect, I think he's one of the best Test cricket batters of all time. I just don't think that T20 is really his game. It's really, it's all quite peculiar, but we're getting used to it now, Harmy, aren't we? I mean, New Zealand have got a thin summer of international cricket, and obviously somebody in the Big Bash or elsewhere have said that that they have indicated to Williamson that they're prepared to pay him some big money. So he said no contract this year, but he absolutely committed to New Zealand cricket. He'll obviously play the 3 Test matches against England at the end of the year, also live and exclusive here on talkSPORT 2. What does it all mean, or does it mean nothing? Have we already visited this territory?
Yeah, we've already visited this territory. What does it all mean? I actually think it's not a bad thing for New Zealand cricket, because whenever you get an international game and you pick New Zealand, you pick New Zealand's one of all-time greats in Kane Williamson, he'll turn up and play. So I don't think there's anything lost there. He's going to utilise his game somewhere else and make more money. It's not a bad thing for New Zealand cricket, because they can then give a central contract to somebody else, who then they can develop and hopefully turn into a player as close to Kane Williamson, if there is such a thing in New Zealand, because he is a ridiculously talented player. But my question to you, man, is this is what New Zealand cricket is looking like now. Are we going to see that in South Africa? You know, you're in South Africa. Are South African players going to turn their central contracts down because they've got very little cricket when it comes to international cricket, and their chance to earn money around the world, I think, would be far easier to do so if they didn't have a contract over them? Or is the SA20 part of that contract that's too good to turn down?
The SA20 plays a massive role, Harmy, and that's proper money. You know, yeah. I mean, that's better money than the 100. So the South African Cricketers Association, South Africa's version of the PCA, is very, very strong, very proactive in doing all they possibly can to keep the best players in South Africa. And South African players are pretty loyal as well, not necessarily to the national team so much, but loyal to the country and the badge. And a couple of years ago, I would have said that the exodus would have been in full flood now, and that South African players would have been leaving in droves. But the truth is that if you have an IPL contract, you're one of the top South African players, Rabada, Klaasen, Miller, and you've got a good SA20 contract, which is also worth $200,000-300,000, then it's actually worth your while sticking around, because you can spend 3 or 4 months at home. You don't need to travel the world. And the Cricketers Association have done a really, really laudable job, I think, helped by the fact that Cricket South Africa's administration is so feckless and so clueless that the Players Association are basically running the player contracts. But in a different scenario, it could change very quickly, and South Africa could be, playing their C and D teams internationally. But Harmy, just on the subject of franchise cricket, now, Shaheen Afridi, I think this is much bigger news than Kane Williamson, I have to say. Shaheen Afridi has just gone, no thanks, signed a contract with Welsh Fire, £100,000 for the 100, and it's just gone, nah, actually, I'd rather play in Canada. That sent shivers down my spine.
That is a message to the ECB to hurry up. I was going to say something else there, but hurry up and sell the 100, because if that's not a message, I mean, it has been kept reasonably quiet. There's been a few organisations who have put it out there. But you're right. I think this is massive news. English cricket desperately needs to get their finger out and change whatever they need to change to make sure that 100 gets sold. because Pat Cummins has gone to America. You know, Shaheen Afridi has gone to Canada. I mean, Canada to play instead of playing in the 100. That's enough of a message to say, you know, stop thinking about yourselves. Think about the greater of the game, and you'll get that back. You'll get the money back eventually once the whole thing's sold. So that there for me, you're right, 100% spot on right. That is a big news story in English cricket, which hasn't, I don't think, been, I think, publicised as much as it probably should have, or sent shockwaves around counties than it should have. If one of Pakistan and, you know, the modern white ball game's best players is quite prepared to go to Canada, and it's for money, but everybody just plays for money, to go to Canada instead of coming playing in our 100. It's not because he doesn't think the 100's very good. It's not because he doesn't want to play in England, because they pay him more. And unfortunately, we're going to have to, you know, it's not about, oh, we run the game. We brought this great game to you. You know, everybody should be wanting to come and play, yeah, in England, and the MCC and the badges and, you know, everything, that establishment that comes with it. Me and Jarrod Kimber, John Norman, spoke about on YouTube about the establishment. Jarrod Kimber's book about getting rid of the establishment. Well, unfortunately, they're going to have to do something very, very quickly, because, you know, the more and more players that are going to go overseas, because let's be fair, once they sell the 100, players in this country in that shortest format will be paid well enough to stay and play and put the right product on. See Cummins and Shaheen Afridi go and play somewhere else, especially Afridi going to Canada. I think that should tell you exactly why the 100 needs sold.
Just as an addendum to Kane Williamson, by the way, when I said that I didn't think T20 was his game, I don't think it is in the IPL. I don't think he's a flat track bully. I don't think. But if you're playing in conditions, I mean, he would have been a masterstroke if New Zealand had been playing in New York and a strike rate of 100 run a ball. Then he, I mean, if you need to bat properly and in difficult conditions, then I think Williamson does have a role to play, but not on a flat track when you need a strike rate of 150. And he did indicate that he's lining up a gig in the SA20. So if it's with one of the coastal teams where wickets can be a bit trickier, Port Elizabeth or Durban, then he might still yet be a masterstroke signing. But
well, he's connected. He's close to the Sunrisers franchise, isn't he? So he's close to the Sunrisers franchise. So that's probably the way he will end up in SA20. But I think you're right in an IPL point of view, because the Sunrisers in the last IPL were getting 260s and 250s and 240s. I'm not sure Kane's fitting into that group. With all due respect to Kane, because he's a great man, we've had him on the show, and he's been one of the all-time great players. But they're moving the bar in the Sunrisers Hyderabad, and that ground there, it doesn't seem to be big enough for T20 cricket.
No, it doesn't. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with Durham Hall of Famer Steve Harmison. And next up, we'll hear exclusively from England great Stuart Broad as he looks ahead to the Test summer. So England begin their Test summer in a couple of weeks' time against the West Indies at Lord's earlier this week. talkSPORT's Scott Taylor, and the producer of this programme, spoke with the England great Stuart Broad, who's teamed up with Sage to launch the Sage Small Business 11 competition, which features 10 small businesses, a chance to win a share of £50,000 plus tickets to the 100 final.
Jimmy will be a great asset to the England team on the coaching side, sharing his information and knowledge. He's been hugely successful outside of England, not just in England, and has been through loads of positives, loads of difficulties, loads of changes of different things in his action. So I think England would want to keep him around as much as they could if he wants to do that. So I could certainly see him in Australia in 18 months' time, sharing knowledge with the young bowlers of how to go and win over there. And I'm not saying that's exactly what he will do, but I think I think it would be to the benefit of English cricket if he does.
England legend Stuart Broad talking to us and Scott Taylor on behalf of Sage to launch the Sage Small Business 11 competition. Well, unsurprisingly, Broady knows Jimmy Anderson better than most. He might even say better than Jimmy knows himself. But the fact that that Broady reckons he'll be an instant asset. You know me and my views. I always think that everybody should take a year's garden leave between retiring from playing and taking up any kind of coaching or administration role. But Broady reckons he'll fit just straight into a different role.
Yeah, I think he will. I hope he does. Jimmy likes touring. He's always been away. He's been away for so long. I was with Jimmy on Wednesday in Ireland, and when you say take a year off and go and do some hobbies and play golf, by the look on Jimmy's face when he walked off that golf course, I'm not sure he was looking forward to another game of golf very, very soon, because I think we've just heard Melinda Farrell have a language-fueled rant talking about the ICC T20 World Cup. Jimmy wasn't complimentary about his golf and thingy. So I imagine he's quite happy being around the team again and being in the dressing room for the foreseeable future. I mean, I'd laugh with him. I said, Jim, it's going to be interesting. I said, you got loads, you get 5 wickets. All the bowlers are, you play your benefit match. All the bowlers are injured. They tap you on the shoulder like they tapped you on the shoulder a few weeks ago and say, by the way, can you just postpone the retirement because you're still the best we've got and we can't really move forward because we haven't got anybody else. And the look on his face, wow, he wasn't best pleased with that. He knew I was only joking, but it's gonna be a tough one on the 10th of July. To see a team without Stuart was one thing. To see a team without Jimmy is going to be something completely different. I think it's the right thing. I really do. I'm not sure the timings are going to work in England's favour because there's quite a few England bowlers who are not fit, who are potentially out of form. You've got Mark Wood, who's sort of travelled around the World T20. I think probably Dylan Pennington's in with a shout. I think Matt Potts is in with a shout. Matt Potts, I've covered the last 4 Durham T20 games, and Potts, hasn't hit the ground. He's sort of fired his straps as well as he would probably like. Carter's obviously banned. I'm looking at others. I'm scratching my head. Sam Cook's got a hamstring injury at this moment in time. So where England go and who they select, I'm not so sure. But for 1 week and one final week only, it's going to be a great celebration. Alistair Cook went off with a great big fanfare, and he deserved to. So did Stuart Broad. And I mean, this one's got to be even bigger. And he does not like it. He doesn't like it. He hates it. Jimmy Henderson hates the fact that there's going to be a big song and dance, on his behalf at Lord's. But unfortunately, Jim, you're going to have to smile for 1 week at least because you deserve that send-off. I mean, you've been, for me, the greatest that's ever played cricket for England. So you might have to smile for a week, and then you can go back into the dressing room and hopefully start teaching some younger bowlers what it's like to play international cricket, the skills they need to develop their talents, and also how the standards you have to set to steer at the top for such a long period of time. They were the key components and why Broad and Anderson were the very, very best.
Talking of friends of the programme, Will McPherson of the Daily Telegraph has been absolutely brilliant with us on Following On. He's actually co-hosted a whole bunch of episodes with me. He wrote that Sam Cook was being lined up for his Test debut in place of Jimmy Anderson if he recovers from that hamstring injury. And you'll recall, listeners, Harmy obviously will, that Sam Cook joined us a little earlier on this year to talk about his international aspirations.
The style of bowler I am, I've been unfortunate that I've had probably 2 of England's greatest ever bowlers in front of me with a sort of similar skill set in terms of speed and in terms of what they do with the ball. So from my point of view, looking at that, it's unfortunate, but they're 2 of the greatest who have ever done it. So from a purely fan point of view, it's been a pleasure to watch those guys. I think the way I've kind of looked at it is to try to make sure that if I do get an opportunity, my game's at a point where I'd be ready to fill in and compete at that level. So I'm just trying to focus on continuing to try and keep that sort of record where it is and keep improving more than anything, not being satisfied with sort of what I've done up to this point, keep trying to improve day to day, and hopefully down the line, the England honours will come.
Sam Cook, I think the thing I enjoyed most about that, Harmy, is when I asked him, or was it you who asked him, how he felt about not getting a look in, and whether he wasn't highly appreciated enough. His answer was, well, it was quite difficult. There were two blokes ahead of me in the queue by some way.
They were by somewhere. And yeah, this is the hard part. This is where I'm finding it very difficult trying to push names forward, because in the past, there's always been 2 or 3 young bowlers who you could say, right, they're international potential class to go forward. And they're in their mid to late 30s now, because I can remember talking about Chris Woakes and saying Chris Woakes has got a chance to take over from Jimmy Anderson. And Jimmy Anderson's nearly outseen Chris Woakes. And there's quite a few, and I can think back to my time. If you were 19 to 22, that was when you were talked about as an age going into the England team and getting blooded on an Ashes tour. And there was always that 17th man was the Ashes tour man. But because Broad and Anderson have had that much high standards in themselves, the longevity has been unbelievable. Anybody that's come along has actually made them bowl better to go, no chance, son, go off, go away somewhere else, because you're not going to take my place. And they did it so many times. And there was a comment of Anderson in 2003. But in 2007, when he took over from me and Hoggy in New Zealand, I mean, you're sitting there going, not only is it the right time, it's the right two, and it's a perfect way it's been done. I'm not sensing that now. You sensed it when Gough and Caddick were going. Goughy got injured. Caddick was losing a little bit of zip. Hoggard and Harmison were the next two cabs that had been blooded through Ashes cricket. They were the ones that were going to take over the opening bowling partnership. I mean, Broad and Anderson was so right to be the next ones. I'm not seeing it. I can't think of many. And you talk about Sam Cook. He's not 19 to 22. The one thing I will say about Sam Cook, he's very, very skillful. And he is somebody who I think will benefit from Test cricket. And what I mean by that is, I think Pearce has all talked about. You need two quick bowlers, or two bowlers who are going to make something happen out of nothing. Well, now Stokes is bowling. One of them is going to be Stokes. And then if you've got Archer and Wood as well, then great for the Ashes further down the line. You need somebody to hold an end. You need somebody that's got skill levels. And I think Sam Cook, not playing 7 games in 8 weeks in a championship cricket, and his recovery time will get better. His preparation time will get better. Hopefully his body will be in a position to get the best out of Sam Cook every single time he goes on the field. So he might not be 89, 90 mile an hour. But if he's the best version of Sam Cook at 84, 85 mile an hour, well, Broad and Anderson have been doing that for the last 5 or 6 years and getting lots of wickets. So hopefully, if he does get his chance, he can not be overawed too much by it, because that's the biggest challenge. You can do it, not a problem at Chelmsford when there's not many people watching. Can you do it at Lords when there's 30,000 watching? That's always a question that you can't answer until you have a go. So if it is Sam Cook, once Jimmy's gone, then hopefully he'll be given at least the summer to prove that he's international class. So I think he could be.
Right, Harmy, on to the final word. A couple of highlights on the field. Marnus Labuschagne's extraordinary running diving catch for Glamorgan against Gloucestershire in the T20 Blast. Jake Bethel's 56 not out off 16 balls for the Birmingham Bears in their Blast game against Northamptonshire. But I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever where your last word this week will be going.
Yes, it is. It's with David Sid Lawrence. I mean, Bethel, get him playing red ball cricket. He's 20-year-old. For me, he is ridiculously talented. I think that boy can play at a good standard further down the line. Labuschagne's catch. After Coughlin's last week, Labuschagne's this week in the Blast. I mean, how on earth not only got to it, but get his hand underneath it. And it was one-handed underneath it. That was a special catch. But for me, it's got to be David Sid Lawrence, somebody who I watched as a youngster growing up. You've seen the fast bowlers on the telly, and Devon Malcolm and Sid Lawrence bowling in the big sweaters. Unfortunately, he's been diagnosed with motor neurons. He's been, I think, a pillar for the the diversity in this country when it comes to sport, when he's been president of Gloucester for a long period of time. And we've seen what, obviously, the motor neurons disease, there's no cure for it at this moment in time. We've seen, obviously, Rob Burrows died not long ago and what that disease does. So we wish everybody, I think, from talkSPORT wishes Sid all the very, very best. So for me, my last word tonight is to a special fella, because he always played with a smile on his face. He's a larger-than-life character, and the only thing he ever wanted to do was bowl fast, and that's a man after my heart. So good luck, Sid.
He is a very, very special man. And I have to say, Harmy, amongst the probably 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000 professional cricketers I've met in my career, he was one of the very few in my early 20s when I was young, naive and out of my depth covering county cricket in the late 1980s. He was one of the few who came and put his arm around my shoulder and said, "You're right," and had a chat. And the next season, do you remember when there were still bowl-offs, when games got rained off, one-day game, and you'd have to bowl at 3 stumps, unguarded? And Sid was one of the chosen bowlers, and he ran in and he bowled absolutely perfect line, and it passed over the top of off stump by about 1.5 foot. And I said to him afterwards, I said, "Sid, what were you doing?" And he said, "Well, that's my length. That's my length."
Mine would have gone exactly the same. Like I say, a man after my own heart. He's got his own length. He sticks by his length, and all he wanted to do was bowl it fast. That was brilliant.
Harvey, until next week, brilliant. You've been listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, and Steve Harmison. If you've missed any of the show or you wish to catch up, you can download the podcast from the Following On feed, available as always via the free talkSPORT app or wherever you get your podcasts. And as I said, we'll be back at the same time next week to look back at the T20 World Cup final. But for now, this has been another Following On.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.